Hello, everyone. This is Driftwood Conversations, and I'm Hilary Sloan. My guest today is Sandra Mendelson, an animal communicator and channel whose work invites us to consider our relationship with animals and the unseen world that connects us. This conversation is personal. Sandra is my second cousin. We knew each other only distantly as children, and life carried us in different directions. We hadn't seen each other in decades. Recently, I came across her again and discovered the path her life had taken mirrors my own in a quiet yet unmistakable way. When we connected, we recognized we shared a sensitivity and a distinctive way of perceiving the world, one not common in the family, or at least never spoken of. This conversation became a kind of a reunion and an exploration. Sandra speaks about her awakening later in life, about learning to trust what arrives without explanation, and about the role animals may play in reflecting back to us what we've forgotten about ourselves. Her work moves between communication, energy, and a broader awareness that we are not separate from nature, from each other, or from something far more expansive. This conversation doesn't move in a straight line. It opens, circles, and deepens. There are moments that feel grounded and others that ask you to stretch beyond what you think you know. And somewhere inside it lingers a question. What if we are more than who we think we are? Sandra, why don't you tell everybody who you are and where you live and what your passion is?
Okay, who I am. I think we won't get too spiritual with our answer because then it would just be I am presence, I am light. But what I do is since 2012, I have been a channel of animal consciousness, bringing through messages and insights from, I guess now well over 100 species of the animal kingdom, as well as an animal communicator, and they're very different. That is absolutely my passion, waking up, sharing with other people in their awakening to what's really happening around us in the animal world, how they live, what they perceive, their energetic roles, how they're helping us, how they see us, clearing up the misconceptions that we have because we misinterpret their behavior all the time, and helping humans through our awakening. You know, our vibration rises when we go out in nature, and the same thing happens with animals. They are, and we're not talking about animals that have been through trauma at the hands of humans. We're talking in their basic state. They are holding a higher vibration. They're not stuck in the mind or in ego. So they're really here setting this 5D playing field for us to help humans awaken. And where I live is in Florida, in Palm City. Probably about 45 minutes north of West Palm Beach. That's the closest airport.
You're my cousin, which is so exciting to me. And we hadn't seen each other,
Oh gosh.
if
I think I
ever.
was 4. I think I was 4 years old. So it's not like you and I collaborated on this, like, oh yeah, bring my cousin on. It's like, who are you?
So I saw you on Facebook, and that's how I reached out. And what was so exciting is to realize that you were an empath and a psychic, had the same love of the unknown that I do.
Except you had these gifts or knew you had these gifts at first when you were very young. And I was more like, I sound like I'm quoting the movie Gigi, at last. We marry at last. Well, I did not discover this ability at all until I was 53. Not an inkling. Not an inkling. So I hope that gives some people some inspiration that, you know, we wake up when we're ready to, you know, we embrace and recognize our gifts when we're ready to do it. And there's no judgment. It can happen at any time in life.
And it can be very confusing when it happens later, I'm sure.
Yeah, I believe now it's a little easier than when you were young. There's so much more awareness of energy, of multisensory gifts, of, there's podcasts like the telepathy tapes, which really are focusing on the unbelievable over the top gifts of autistic children that can do stuff that, I mean, if anyone saw me listening in my car, they would laugh because my mouth is always hanging open. But this is all part of it. You know what I mean? We are so much more than we think.
How was it for you? Describe what happened when you woke up to this talent.
I like when people ask me that question because this did not happen when I was trying to meditate more, be more, do more, feel more, give more, connect more with God. None of that. I simply wanted to be near horses. So I followed two things, my joy and my curiosity. I wasn't looking at what needed to be fixed in the world or trying to be better, which is pretty much in there. This time, no, I just was surrounded by 65 barns. I had become a health coach and I started working with polychromatic light therapy. So I became certified to work on horses because that was the way I could be near them. I really didn't have the desire to ride them. A handful of times I have. It was the eye-to-eye connection that drew me and their presence. So it happened when I was doing body work on a horse.
Tell me about that. What is it? Polychromatic healing?
Light therapy?
Light therapy.
Well, people, right now everybody's running around hawking red light therapy. This was back in 2012 when I was fortunate to be put in contact with a company that was making systems that NASA and the Navy SEALs had used. And then they made it better. And we don't need to get into that and the eye mask and the endocrine system. But the bottom line is it's utilizing certain healing frequencies of light to increase circulation, decrease inflammation, and basically help the body return to balance. But it isn't like these gizmos that you see out there, which just puts the light on you. The light is pulsed at the healthy frequencies of the tissues in the body. So not only do you have the action of the light, you have the frequency that causes entrainment, right? A happy person walks into a party and kind of sets this higher tone. And then very often the rest of the room rises. That's entrainment, right? So the same thing with your cells. They recognize the healthy frequency of their tissue, and then the tissue rises to its healthy frequencies. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. Different wavelengths of light go in different depths in the body.
How were you trained in this?
I became certified through the Photonic Therapy Institute, created by a friend years ago, because people were buying all kinds of light tools and none of these companies were teaching people how to really use them. So she brilliantly created the Photonic Therapy Institute, where people, no matter whether they have a laser, light therapy pads, photonic torches to use on acupuncture points, a panel, didn't matter who sold them what. They could come to the Photonic Therapy Institute and really learn how to use their tools. So I became certified first in, I can't remember which one came first. I think it was light therapy for humans and animals, and then equine photopuncture, which is basically using light on acupuncture points instead of needles. And the light gets carried through the meridians. It's utterly brilliant, because I think right now, the kind of healers I think that people are realizing, that's the real deal, are the ones that teach you how to heal yourself. They teach you how to do for yourself. And this whole technology is predicated on you being able to do this. When a horse is down and you just do these acupoints and then they stand up and they walk away, and you see these things happening over and over, it's not only very empowering as humans, it also bonds you really closely with your animals. Your animals don't want you to give away, hire this specialist, hire that one. They want you to know. So this is an intermediary stage until we really know how to use the energy in our bodies fully. This is a beautiful intermediary tool that anybody can use. And most of the time, they'll buy something for their animal, and when they see how effective it is, then they'll be open to using it on themselves. So,
And have you worked with it on yourself?
Oh gosh, are you kidding? Well, we're talking two different kinds of systems. One of them is light therapy pads, which I love because they cover large areas of the body. So imagine like a neoprene pad, different shapes. You can wrap it around body parts. And the light diodes are in there, kind of like that light bright thing we played with as kids, but they're rounded. So you don't have to think, oh my goodness, what light. The lights are already in there. The frequencies are pulsed in through the controller. All you do is press the button and choose a frequency. In fact, I tell people what I love about this is, yes, I can give you protocols, but what is so key is put your hand on the pad and try each frequency. Close your eyes and see which one you feel the most. Your body is saying, yes, please, give me that one. So you can't mess up. The body is made of light and sound. And so when you put those things like sound healing, right? When you expose the body to that, it's a natural acclimation process. It's absorbing what it is, what it's made of. So yeah, I get pretty excited about it because it's next to my bed. And I love something that I can feel. And when I put those pads on my lymph, because we know how important the lymphatic system is. It's the system of bodily fluids. It has no pump. You want to move garbage out of your body, inflammation and toxins. It's going to move out through the skin and through the system of fluids. So when you put the pads on and you feel it, or you put it over your mouth where you've had dental surgery, I could go on and on. Like my mom was borrowing my system years ago so much. Finally, she decided to buy one, and she had dropsy. Her foot would just drop. As long as she uses her light, she hasn't had dropsy since.
Interesting. I was going to ask you if she used it, and how did she receive you moving into this field?
I am very fortunate because my mom is very strong, but she had a near-death experience when she was, from like a ruptured ovarian cyst before I was born, so maybe 18. And that made her open to what she cannot explain. So when I suddenly showed up, and she knows me so well, and I said, Mom, and she's like, relax. It was about the animals, right? Like I heard this stuff and it was way beyond my level of consciousness at the time, in 2015, I think this was. She said, relax, that's not you. You're funny, but you're not that funny, and you're smart, but you're not that wise. But, people are like, oh, she judged you. No. She knew that this was real. She knew I wasn't making it up. Same thing with the lights. The lights was science. That came first, and that was easy to embrace because I could explain the whole thing. And when you put it on your body and you feel it, and maybe there's a lag, maybe 24 hours later you feel it, but your pain goes down. I always tell people, if you have something on the surface, like she fell and her hand blew up on top, put a light pad on for 20 minutes, all of the swelling went down. I mean, it was literally swollen over an inch above her hand, and it was down. So maybe it'll work on a chronic thing. Maybe it'll help internally.
Do you know what the beamer is?
That's a magnetic pad blanket. I've used it before. And my attitude is, I am all for anybody using energy tools for healing. The reason I personally prefer the light is both the beamer and the light therapy system disrupt the patterns of dis-ease, but the light therapy system puts in the healthy frequencies, exposes you, and it also has non-physical solfeggio tones in it, which sometimes it's not physical. I knew a woman came to a demo, she couldn't move her head all the way around for 6 years. 20 minutes on the non-physical frequencies, and she was moving her head completely, and she was shocked, right? Sometimes it's not a physical thing, but it shows up that way. So I like the fact that the light therapy system offers that. But you know what? As I said, I'm thrilled anytime anybody is saying, okay, if it ain't right, give it light, or give it magnet therapy, non-invasive, and it's safe.
So once you began communicating with animals, how did that journey go, and what did they tell you?
I was the biggest doubting Thomas that ever lived. It happened up in New York. The very first thing I heard was, this hay is crap. 5 minutes later, and I looked up, and I'm working on his foot, so I'm really trying to pay attention. I was totally in a mindful, non-thinking state because I didn't want to get stepped on by this 1,200-pound beauty. And I look up and I notice he's flinging the hay off the top of the bale to get underneath. Within 5 minutes, one of the horse moms walked in and said, "There's mold all over the hay." I didn't know anything about hay. And then a few weeks later, there was a horse named Emelian who completely changed my entire life. Absolutely determined that I would hear him. So the conversation started like, I'm putting away my light therapy equipment and I hear, "Why are you wasting your time with all this equipment? Why don't you just run energy? The horses are waiting for you." Goes on. "When the barn closes at 4 o'clock, we can drop the facade." That was my word, the front, "and be our true selves. We hear the birds speak. The plants speak. Everything speaks." Went on later. Horses are always sending love to humans. You just don't know it. And I thought quietly, where do they get the energy from? And I heard, we leave our bodies to connect with all that is because our frequency gets lower being in a body. Absolutely convinced I made this up. When I went back to the barn, head down, tail between my legs, get humble, he head-butted me all the way out of his stall into the aisle. And I heard, "You bought into the illusion again. We need you." Okay, another one. Sitting, and there was more, but the last thing I'll share from that mind-changing encounter, I was sitting outside on the grass. He was hanging his head outside the stall. I'm in meditation position, and I feel electrical currents run through my arms like nothing I had ever done on my own. He said, "Did you feel that? I sent that to you. This is what we do. We heal with our bodies and talk with our minds. I like you. And I've decided to take you under my wing and rescue you from humanhood. I'm tired of the way things are, and I know you are too, and you will help change them." Okay, well, all I did while I was there, I heard these horses say, because they heard my thinking, "You said you were going to help me." Well, if they're human, didn't hire me, I couldn't touch them. 3 years, I'm like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this information? I know I didn't make it up, but then I moved to Florida, and September 28th of 2015, every single horse in a barn spoke. My hand was just writing, and that began this journey that I have thanked Source for every single day of my life since. It changed everything. It brought meaning. It gave me something to share because I always wanted to be a writer and never felt like I had anything to say that hadn't been said before. And so by the time 53 species came through, I thought, well, if it blows my mind, maybe it'll blow somebody else's mind, and maybe I should write a book from this. Because it wasn't the Sandy show or the Sandy opinion. It was bigger than that. And I never read anybody else's work because I'm so impressionable, I would think I was getting it wrong if I heard something different. So even people that endorsed my book, I never read their work. I couldn't, I just kept gathering it. So did it change my life? Completely. Here I was working on animals, and then I started hearing them, but I was not ready to call myself an animal communicator. I took some classes. I got some hits, if you will, but I didn't learn how to do this from a teacher. Maybe for the first time I wasn't overthinking anything. And that really, the teacher says do it this way and it has to look this way, and why am I not getting it that way? That would not have worked for me, So I just started posting. I just started sharing stuff from the animals, thinking people might like it. And when the book came out, the first book, I would put a link, hey, you want to know more, whatever. And I didn't realize that through the years, it created street cred. And people wanted to hire me to connect with their animals because of, just this. I was not thinking beyond the sharing. I can't even give you exact dates of when I started doing the work. But at first I said, if I don't get stuff of value, I'll just give you your money back. I'm fine. I protected myself that way. It was a little chicken, but it did also take the stress off the other person. They realized they had nothing to lose. And if they relaxed, their animal relaxed. So never once did anybody need their money back because they weren't stressing about money. It was energy flowing. So sometimes you do things and you don't really know that was the best thing you could have done.
What animals have you worked on, and how did you get to them? Because from what I've seen, these aren't all horses. They're not all in Florida. You've been all over the world, right?
Fortunately, the horses pushed me from the very beginning. So face to face with horses at that barn that I mentioned. And one of them blew my mind. He said, and he's in the book, he said, this is where your telepathic abilities really come in. You can tune into anyone from anywhere. I do it all the time. I'm working a lot with horses in Tunisia, Morocco, that area. I was like, oh gosh, I can't believe this. He said, I just ask permission, leave my body, do the work, helping these horses with physical and emotional stuff, and then land back in my body, but I always land hard with a thud. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. But I sat down on the floor of my apartment, and a Cape buffalo, the ones you see in Africa, right? A blue whale and a sacred cow, clearly like in Mumbai, surrounded by millions of people, came through with stuff that was so mind-blowing. That's when I went to my mother, and she reassured me, nah, not you. So the horses, so what would happen, they would say, the horses said, ask pointed questions, put them down on paper. So I would hold a question, I sometimes write it down or hold it in my mind. And I would see with my eyes closed an animal stepping forward to answer that question. So for example, and I would ask every question I could think of. Of course, I started with love and relationships and, romance. Just amazing what they came through with. I'm still smiling because it's so amazing what their perspective is. And, went on to hardship and health and God and religion and, anything I could think of. So, for example, the way it would work, like when I said, who wants to talk about death? Well, oddly, a skunk stepped forward. So the skunk said, I memorized this one, that's why I can tell you without looking at paper. He said, I'll talk about death because to us there is no such thing. It is a human construct. We just hang out in our bodies for a while, and then they start to break down, and then we get a little rest, and then we get a new model like a car. And if you think we keep getting the same make, model, and color over and over again, you couldn't be more wrong. We get different models to learn different lessons. This time, I'm a skunk. Next time, a walrus, or a porpoise, or even a human. But you have to be ready for that because it's complicated and you have to live in your head and have your senses dumbed down. I'm getting a headache just thinking about it. But having the experience of being human is so important because when your intention is high, you can create concrete reality that benefits us all. We still believe in humans. There are so many beautiful ones trying to find the way out of this mess. Now, mind you, this was well over a decade ago. There's been a lot of human awakening and what happened during COVID, and but it was pretty mind-blowing for me to start realizing that the animals have been living a certain way all along. Respect is huge in their world. When you think of wild animals, what video footage do you see? You only see predator-prey because it's exciting to watch. That's what they capture on camera. You don't see how a leopard told me they will leave a watering hole if the other species there don't approve. And neatness and efficiency is extremely important to them, right? Lions, I could go on and on, but I better stop talking.
No, this is fascinating. Did you travel to any of them? Have you been on safari?
I did, COVID killed that trip. So I had started communicating with these elephants it's still to this day the first elephant rescue in South Africa. There's a big one, the Sheldrick Trust up in Kenya. Apparently the two can do a lot of node comparison and sharing of tools. So I was supposed to go in 2020 and COVID killed that trip. And I didn't finally meet them until October of last year.
So you did get there.
I did get to meet them. And what was even more shocking is, these are rescued elephants that live in, they have a covered protective homestead where they sleep. And the carers, walk them and have them do certain things. They greet people at the gate every day who come to see them locally. But this particular safari place is in the middle of a game reserve, a private reserve that's filled with all big five. What I heard from the wild animals was probably even more mind-blowing. The deliberate behaviors that they show, so people in the Jeeps, walk away with an upgrade. they gave me messages for the guides who show people to them every day, that they allow them, they could easily hide their hunting, their mating. They let them see everything so that the humans, can enter their world. And lions are always serious. They're like, do not mock us in any way. This is not a joke to us. They show trust. They show harmony. No matter how loud the engines, how many times we turn them on and off, they just seemed unfazed. So did the elephants, the leopards, the different species that I heard from. It's all deliberate. By the way, the name of the reserve is the Kapama Reserve, which is part of Kruger National Park. Everybody knows Kruger because it's huge. This deliberate intention to dispel fear and have people experience more oneness with the life around us, because there's so much misconception and fear about wild animals,
I did get to Tanzania, I told you that, and so I went on safari. We went to 3 different parks, and we drove through some while I was there as a photographer. So it was fascinating. It's beautiful. I mean, the place and the animals, but I didn't get those kind of messages.
Well, look, I can't take photographs. We get different skill sets. The idea is to trust our intuitive senses. More and more the animals have come, you name it, wild, domesticated. They want so badly for us to experience joy, because they feel joy in the air and the rain and we don't. And to be kind to ourselves, because as a blue whale said, all health, all regeneration, even joy begins with self-care, learning how to be kind to yourself and to trust the voice within, the gut instead of the head. Like these messages have repeatedly shown up, no matter whether I'm listening to a client's animal talk in depth about his or her person, or whether I'm hearing it from animal consciousness. So I have connected with individual animals with names, and also the oversoul. Like when leopard came through, I had not met a leopard. It was the oversoul of leopards. Here's a good one. Are you ready for this? And I don't make this one public too often. Why do predator animals roll in buffalo dung? Okay, if you know anything about animals and how exquisitely sensitive both the predator and the prey are to each other, if you think that a leopard rolling in dung is going to hide himself from a caribou, like from an antelope, are you kidding? Of course the antelope knows they're there. It's actually a celebration of energetically evolving, moving higher up on the scale of awareness, like soul evolution, right? How they handle things, peace, harmony, acceptance of what is, respect for all, like soul growth. It's a celebration because no one's judging them. They just know that they moved higher, right? I can't prove that, but that's what they told me. So there's a whole lot going on. The big cats and the different energetic roles that they play, keepers of information. It goes on. I feel like it's a huge jigsaw puzzle, and I've only seen a couple of pieces and been able to stick them together, which is better than nothing. As long as I'm human, I'll never get it all. But someone asked me, could you please connect with the sharks off the coast of Greenland? They live 250, maybe even 500 years. I'm like, no, I can't do that. And then a couple of years later, I was on the telephone and I see these ancient sharks behind my eyes. I'm like, can I call you back? Excuse me. And the long and short of it is they said, we live so long because we are not of here. We are not from here. We are powered by immense amounts of light. No one goes without help. So they are here energetically to help the other beings in the ocean, like the whales do, right? With sound, with light, with energy, because of sonic booms, war, pollution, things like that. That was enough of an explanation.
That is really beautiful. That doesn't surprise me. Somehow I sensed all of this, not in specifics and not as messages from animals, but just that we aren't what we think we are. And that there are beings here that all of us are from different places. We're all connected to something so much bigger.
Even camels have come through and told me that space beings or light beings, whatever you would have been coming here since the dawn of time, said the desert would light up upon their arrival, and they were always helpful. So it's in the DNA kind of thing that I know there's no past, these are all parallel timelines, but working with light beings is something that the horses have told me when they're not in trauma, in their really pure natural state, when they are not taking on human issues, move that over, soul contracts, they can travel to different dimensions, hear all life and communicate with all life and work with light beings. I've met one horse that could do it. And she gave me details about what happened in the different dimensions. And she said, you see, what happens in terms of evolution happens first in the other dimensions. And then if we humans don't get in the way, it will manifest and solidify here on Earth. So what we see around us is just yesterday's news, right? So the evolution of Earth, the regeneration, this new Earth, she used to say, it is so beautiful. I wish you could feel what we do. They can read what's in your field, what's coming for you. I mean, I could just talk until tomorrow morning. It is shocking and beautiful. And you know what? We can only really get our minds around so much at once.
How has it affected your spiritual life and then moved down into your physical life?
When you feel like you're on the outside looking in, if you're not having your own, and I wasn't, I mean, some energetic experiences, seeing things behind my eyes, but I didn't feel God personally. It's fine when you read about it and you try to meditate and there's all these different retreats and things. But I always felt like I was pressing my nose against the glass. Why don't I feel connected to something bigger than me? When this began happening, and even recently, a leopard said to me, don't attribute all this wisdom to us. We're all just channels for source, like you humans can be. And so because they're not bogged down in the human condition, source flows so freely through them that I had the experience for myself. So this whole ride has been my spiritual awakening because I had to feel it. I had to go, oh my gosh, this consciousness. I'm communicating in detail with horses in Australia all the time to this day. This cracked me open in a way that I guess I had studied energy, worked with energy healers, but this just deepened and widened the whole road for me and made it feel real. It wasn't just something I was trying to maintain. It just happened. It came. And some people, can sit in meditation for an hour or 2 hours and it happens. We're all so unique, right? They become the mountain. They experience total oneness. And of course it changed my I don't even want to call it work because I smile when I talk about it. I love to do it. It has given me a way also to put my heart out into the world because every time I connect with an animal, I spend over a half an hour on the phone with the human because this is about their soul contract with their animal. And the animal is usually, if they act out or whatever, it's about what's going on in the family, in the house, in the area. And the animals never tell me anything I should not know to make the person uncomfortable. It's just beautiful because they hear their humans' thoughts and feel their emotions and see the pictures in their head. And the animals don't judge. So not once have I been privy to information that made the human shut down and feel overexposed or judged. Never happened. I'm lucky. I'm blessed because the animals are driving the bus.
So what does a day look like for you? Do you work all the time or very often? How do you contact people? How do they contact you?
I'm glad you asked that because when I talk to people who are who are solo practitioners of healing modalities and stuff, it's not a consistent everyday thing. It's like working in a retail store where you could get a flood. I mean, if I run a special, even if it's just, $25 or $50 I took off, I ran it last February and I was solidly booked from February through the end of April. And I want to give it everything. So I don't want to be overscheduled. Right now, if I have a client right now that has 17 cats. She used to have 22. And right now, I think it's about 7 of them that she wants me to read. And I need to space them out so the voices don't blend together and we can go really deep. And then when I look at them, first of all, I know they are complete when the speaking stops, if you will. And each one is breathtakingly different. So what is a day like? I like to have the morning to, yoga, meditation, working out at home. And then Monday through Sunday, I make myself available when the clients need it because a lot of people work. So it can be erratic also with different time zones. Am I talking to someone in Australia or Sweden or here? I just feel like there's not too much. I feel blessed that I can kind of spread it out so I can give it everything. And then there's also classes to teach. There's a center nearby that is ready for me to teach another series. Then there's book stuff. One woman found my book in the Czech Republic and they got it translated and published at no cost to me. And that was, and I went there 2 summers ago and I did all these talks and, internet TV shows. So there's that surprise factor, that's always out there because people find the books when they're ready, I had someone come to me and for an animal communication session. And I said, by the way, how'd you find me? She said, my therapist is reading your book. Okay. And that's another thing, when you see veterinarians showing up to take animal communication classes.
That's pretty amazing.
That made me say, oh, okay, this is super, breaking out of the box. Because she's intuitive and, she started doing at-home euthanasia. And she was feeling things, So this really helps people expand their multisensory abilities, which we all have and we're all using, but we instantly tend to discount them instead of going, what was that? Days are not ever the same.
It's very fascinating to me. I mean, you said it several times, we're all different. And I know a lot of people that are in different levels and different modalities of the healing arts, and you can't predict anything.
Although I do really feel that, and I'm always open for this, and the animals told me this years ago, it's really time to come together. Tricky for humans in the world of duality, and I'm not even talking money and sharing a space, but maybe energetically, right? People are doing worldwide meditations, they're creating webs of light, they're sending energy to Mother Earth or to places that really need it. So I think energetically, that's the first way and the least conflicted way for us to start joining together for the good. When it comes to, well, I do this modality and you do that modality, how do we come together? It's not impossible. And I really see that happening because, we're so much more powerful when we put our energy together. People are building conscious communities. There's stuff happening.
Definitely, there's a lot happening. I tune into astrologists now and then. I don't know much about it, but I like their overview, and there's some that are very good. And everything you're talking about is being predicted.
Do you listen to Pam Gregory?
I do.
I knew it. I love her.
Have you listened to Lee Harris?
Yep. Those are the two.
Those are the two. I love him.
Yep.
And one of the things that they've said recently is that even astrology is changing. And Lee said his work is changing. So nothing's predictable right now. I know my work has felt, even when it was completely undefined, when I was just whatever I was doing, it was about holding the energy of love and bringing people together, connecting people. So when you were talking about connection, I feel very much part of that. And that's why I started this podcast. It was a way of highlighting or illuminating what their lives were about. And so that we'd understand there were similarities and differences. And when we come together, it's so much more potent and wonderful. But I feel like this very small slot, and I see so many people working I'm not sure what's next. It's probably about just being present.
Then there's something else going on. And I don't, look, with light, there is always darkness. And that's why Lori Ladd is brilliant at addressing what's going on right now. There is a spiritual battle going on, and it's on the energetic level. So what she says is, if you are feeling things like, or a habit that has come back, thoughts that are just beyond any negativity you've experienced before, with all the work you've done. She said, what you've done before is not going to work anymore, because now we're dealing with infiltration. So, does it affect everybody? No. But sensitives, yes. Like I just signed up for her 4-day masterclass about tools to deal with this, because some people that are very sensitive, like me, are really feeling it, where you're like, everything is beautiful in your life, and things that absolutely defy logic or your own experience of yourself. Anything I feel, I'm not the only one feeling it,
There's a lot of emphasis lately on the nervous system, too.
Yeah.
Really
Yep.
healing and bringing the nervous system into balance, because that's where we're being impacted the most.
You got it. You got it. That's, people's sleep is disrupted. We've got all the solar activity, the flares, the Schumann resonance, all of this stuff atmospherically. And I really admire Lori Ladd, because she's dealing with a sticky aspect of this whole thing, which is that there is a war for our thoughts. Not just the wars going on in certain spots on the planet still, but a war for our thoughts to keep us disempowered and fearful. And you know what? If it doesn't resonate, spit it out. But if it resonates, don't think it's you or that you've gone backwards. She said the more we bring God light in and feel, yes, we know we are divine sparks, but what does it mean to become more godlike? To be kinder. I mean, you know this, right? Heart-centered, more patient, right? More accepting, less judgmental, less reactive, right? Passionate.
The reactive is a big part of it. And our thoughts are so important. Every thought. Recently, yesterday, we were talking about stories. The stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or about the world we live in that aren't true. How do you change a habit is what I'm always working with. And there's never one procedure. There's never one rule. There's never one way. It depends on the energetic of that habit.
And being okay to be in process as long as we're in body. Like, it's
Right.
not like, oh, I haven't gotten there yet. No, this is exactly why we're here. This transformation is about, I asked the elephants. I'll tell you two things, horses and elephants. Honeybee, the horse that traveled interdimensionally, she said to me over a decade ago, every thought matters because it affects matter, from a horse. I asked the elephants, how do you evolve? They said, well, we don't focus on evolving, for one thing. We just pay more attention to how we react in any given moment, and then we get better at it. Cats have told me they just rise to what is, if there is a need. It is slow down and not think. You have to embrace and be all, try harder, love, like I said, love more, give more, do more, human service today. It's absolutely the keys to overwhelm, the human approach.
Mm-hmm.
If we, right back to the breathe, pause, you've heard that, the pause before you react, that's huge. Huge. Just wait. And you can shift everything that, like the animals say, when you slow down, you don't say things you'll regret. Your voice becomes calmer and people want to listen to what you have to say. And your energy field that everybody feels becomes clear as a pool. And even by saying this, right, I can, I'm a high energy being. So I have to work harder to bring it down, slow it down. I feel like a hummingbird. Would I rather feel like Ferdinand the Bull rolling around in the daisies? You betcha. But that's not the nervous system that I got. So I love Ferdinand the Bull kind of people. It's lovely.
Was there anything in your childhood that prepared you for this?
No, none, zero. The only thing that I can say is my mom I wasn't allowed to have an animal until I was 7 because my grandma, Betty, was terrified. Her mother told her when she was little that the German Shepherd next door would give her polio.
Oh
So
dear.
she was afraid of animals her whole life. So I wasn't allowed to have an animal till I was 7. And then I got a cat. And she would follow me to the bus stop. But I had no, I mean, I was in the matrix, you know what I mean? Just everything we did with the animal and, what we thought was the right thing to do. It was very 3D. No, nothing prepared me at all.
What about, step aside from animals, what about creativity? Your mother was a dancer. There's something when you dance where you lose the ego and you just move.
My mother, to this day, can go see a dance performance, and all night long she dreams that she's dancing because she never felt that level of freedom from anything else as when she could jump like that. Astrology is kind of interesting because if you look at somebody with a really loaded 10th house, which is career and father, and 4th house, which is home, roots, mother, the parents are probably going to play a significant role in that person's life as opposed to, see you later, mom. So I just got to a point towards the end of high school where I said, am I going to be a dancer like mom or go to this college like my dad? I had no ability to say, who am I? So when this thing with the animals happened, there were no guidebooks. There was no one showing me or telling me what to do. Right down to publishing a book. I never took a course. I never hired an agent. Like I really kept saying, I'm bumping along the bottom. I don't know what I'm doing. And that was the best thing ever because it was organic. And it was, excuse the ego, it felt like it was mine because it wasn't taught to me. It wasn't given to me. I didn't inherit it from, like a business or something. So the creativity came through that, I guess. And you know what? I've come to realize that creativity can really be interpersonal. Like if we're all rainbows and you don't even know what colors are in you until you're with another and they need it or it's triggered and all of a sudden, right? Like your wisdom and creative ideas and stuff come out that are only activated by the presence of another, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots more types of creativity, social creativity, I don't know, than what we think, if you don't paint or dance or sing or something.
All right, all right. I mean, that I knew about myself from day one, that I was creative, and that explained even the psychic or the empathic communications and things, the knowing. It was more from an artistic point of view. And
Okay.
also, that gave me a reason to be weird.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a piece I wrote in my Substack about growing up artistic. My family used that banner for everything. If dad couldn't keep a job, it was because he was artistic. He was creative, but what I think he was ADHD, and he didn't know it. And now, understanding that diagnosis, I haven't been diagnosed as that, but I know I am.
Why do you say that? Why do you think that you are? Because you've been
Oh,
listening to this whole conversation and following this entire train of thought, and I have been a bit all over. So I guess my question is like, does your mind jump somewhere else and you have to rein it back in, or why do you think you are that, or have that, or do that, or whatever?
I think the work that I've done in the last 10, 15 years, the writing and the working for the radio, it's all taught me how to focus. Back in the 60s when we were doing drugs, I could never do downers. Anything that brought me down made me sick. But anything that was speed related would calm me down and make me
Oh,
sing.
okay.
And that's a key sign.
So, but again, you know what I think that as we move forward through time, and I've heard inklings of this, the definition or the explanation of ADHD or having your polarity reversed, I think it's changing, like, what do they call it? Neurodivergence, right? They learn a different way. Like, we have this box of what we think is normal, and we have a very narrow definition on that whole spectrum of what normal is. And I think we're going to, right, like I mentioned, the telepathy tapes, mind-blowing podcast to find out what autistic children can do. And they spell, so that's their language. But there's a lot of bias against that, right? Like if you're deaf, use sign language, that's okay. But they still haven't embraced autistic children's spelling. And they want to be accepted just as anybody else that's different. They are, because they are non-speakers, you could say, they are, it seems, right? If you listen to all of these many case studies that will boggle your mind, they are able to grasp information that you and I so do not have access to yet. We're stuck in the mind. I'm like, I want to go there too when I listen to it. So I think that
I do agree with you totally. I think that we've put labels in boxes. Sometimes it really helps, you know, to not. I think my father, particularly, because he was so creative, but he couldn't finish things.
Okay.
So, you know, and he was made so wrong for that. And that was the difficulty. If he could appreciate, you know, who he was and the talents he had and what it took to see them into form, you know, the more I learned to focus, the better, more grounded my life is.
And you know what? You know, when the ducks told me they
The ducks.
celebrate each other's strengths and fill in for each other's weaknesses. And community, what was the word? How they said it? Stops the obsession with individual imperfection. So there's this, right? Like very often you'll see a duck with a bunch of ducklings, and the duck said to me, those are not my babies. They fill in for each other. The mother had been traumatized. She was off in the other part of a lake. We don't have that in our society. Everybody has to do everything by themselves, right? And I spoke with a speech pathologist who said, teaching third graders, and he's like, assuming that every third grader is going to read at a third grade level is erroneous, because we haven't yet embraced everybody's different strengths, and we don't fill in for each other. We're still a long way off from that, you know? Like everybody's expected to be able to live alone, do every single thing alone, and sometimes they're really strong at something and really not developed in something else, and then made to feel bad about it. Wouldn't it be nice if we just said, okay, you know, you're orange and I'm purple, you know, like you do, I'll help you with the purple and you help me with the orange, that kind of thing. Yeah, we're not there yet.
Well, you said earlier things are changing. There are communal groups that are springing up. Pam Gregory talks about this a lot, you know, that there's new inventions. There's all sorts of things that are happening that are magnificent.
Not to be astrological, but I noticed this. You know, why is it that I listened to only those two, Pam Gregory and Lee Harris? As it turns out, they're both Tauruses. So to my ears, they sound plausible, real, and grounded. If it was really flighty-whitey, I wouldn't be able to get my arms around it and embrace it into my life. Like they speak a language that makes sense to me, getting from point A to point B. I think that might be part of their popularity. They speak English.
They're grounded. They're very grounded.
Very grounded.
And I agree with you. It's interesting. Those are the two people that speak to me the most, especially right now. So, isn't that funny?
That is funny because there's a whole lot of talking heads out there.
There is. And I've been through a lot of them. And right now, those two are the ones, and even that I've moved away from listening to anything too much, just to get quiet and to listen to myself. What do you want to say to people about the time we're in?
You know, that's when the messaging becomes the same no matter the source. Whether you hear it from talking heads or you get hunches, the more certain things in humanity are being brought to light, the more systems are decomposing because they're not sustainable and they're not equitable. We chose to be here at this time. So what will keep you whole or feeling? I know wholeness is an illusion. I heard that too, because we all have cracks and the light comes in through the cracks. But what will enable you to move through this and and it's always the same, getting out into nature, being with animals. Why? You're stepping away from the human condition. I've had animals say, you got to get out of your homes and even away from each other to find yourselves again and again. It's vibration. Cell towers, squirrels told me years ago, to you it's subtle, but we feel the stuff being pumped into your houses and it's growing stronger and stronger. And to us, it's like being stabbed with electrical wires. Get outside and save yourself.
So you're talking about the electrical and the wiring and
I'm saying, you know what, unless you can really pick up, and I know people that have, and I've lived with them, move to the middle of nowhere. And even then, you still got what's going on in the collective because we are all connected. So getting out into nature. Stop externalizing everything. Whether you journal, whether you sit quietly, whether you get out into nature, instead of responding to everything like kids on their phones, let things come from inside you. Get them onto paper so they look real, is something that the animals have always recommended. Because we'll get hunches and awarenesses and we let them go by. There is so much wisdom in us, but we have been trained to, like circus poodles, to respond to everything around us, what's being fed to us. Obviously, we could go on and on about the news, which is highly censored and controlled and does not give us the accurate story. And focus on what animals told me this years ago, not on your differences, like opinions, like a belly button. Everyone has one. Focus on what you have in common. What does everyone need? Clean air, clean water, harmony, right? Clean food. If you want to put your energy into something, it isn't fighting what you don't want to see, right? Where your attention goes, energy flows. The coming together isn't focusing on, well, this one eats animals and this one's a Republican. No, you got to let that stuff melt away and only focus on what you want to have happen. Get out into nature, being with beings that are not in the human condition. And when you're in the human condition, just focus on what you all have in common. And becoming more spiritual is really, or becoming, awakening is really about being more kind, less reactive. Everything we talked about.
there's something also, I live on 5 acres. I'm in nature. It's all around me. But I know when I lived in New York, I took watermelon seeds and planted them and sat on my fire escape. It was the best I could do for nature. And it was the most wonderful time I had.
Wow.
Just sitting there outside the apartment on the fire escape in this little alley. Every once in a while, a neighbor would wave to me or try to talk to me, but it was watching that little bit of nature grow the watermelon seeds.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said that because there are people that will be listening to your show that live in cities, and if they're lucky, they even have a terrace. So if you know who Lynn McTaggart is, she's wrote The Field, a whole bunch of books. It really, really is about the scientific basis for oneness, the power of intention, like the power of 8. But she did an experiment, made me think of the seeds. She was in Australia. I don't remember where the seeds were, 8,000 miles away, somewhere in the US. And they picked 4 groups. And her people looked at a photo of these seeds and sent energy and blessings. When they planted the seeds, 8,000 miles away from where the energy was being sent, the seeds that completely took off the best in the first week were the ones that were blessed. So if here you are, like that's another experiment that you could do. If you can't be in nature, you can experiment with the incredible power of you, the incredible power of your thoughts and your intentions by putting it into something alive, like watermelon seeds.
The other lesson that I got very strongly was spirit will show you something in parts of your life. Things will be very easy. You'll think something and it'll show up, or you'll meet all the right people. And then you go through a period that doesn't work as well. So the other thing I would say to people when you're in those other times, pull from what you know, pull the feelings and the resources from the more abundant times and really live them as if, because we are going to go through everything.
You know, I heard Neil Donald Walsh speak last night, who wrote the Conversations with God books. And everything fell apart in his life went before these messages started coming through. And basically, to not see the tough things as obstacles, but as opportunities. Like, oh, it's not going to work. Oh, I'm never going to have that love or the prosperity or whatever, instead of what if? Living, like it's totally using the mind. Like, I'm not being held back. This will generate creativity, more ideas, right? To stay in the what if. And he said it much more beautifully and thoroughly than I am. But I just went, yes. I mean, because really, he had everything really challenging happening at once. Oh, bleh. Yeah, really, like, whoa. So from
Well,
that, yeah.
tell
So,
us the name of your book and where we can get it. I
well,
have one.
there's two. We Walk Beside You. Book one is Animal Messages for an Awakening World. The second book is We Walk Beside You, Animal Insights for Everyday Living. So it's good to start with book one because that's the story, you know, how they came through, what did they want us to know, and it really kind of cracks open your consciousness to see their whole existence very, very differently. And book two is written as a message for the day. It was different content that came through after book one came out. So why listen to them? Well, it's better to read book one first, and then you can decide if you want to listen to them. Let them speak for themselves, kind of thing, you know.
So
And
I bought mine on Amazon, but can you get to any bookstore or?
no, they're not in bookstores. They are strictly print on demand. You can go onto barnesandnoble.com.
Do you have a website?
I do. It's sandramendelson.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. Put in We Walk Beside You. Lots of stuff coming through all the time, so always trying to figure out new ways to share it.
Sandra, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show, for your openness, for the way you share what you experience without holding back. That kind of honesty matters. And on a personal note, I want to say how much it means to have found you again after all these years. There's something very special in that, finding a thread in your own family that you didn't know was there, and recognizing something familiar in it. This is what Driftwood Conversations is about for me. It's a place where people can come and speak freely, where experiences don't have to fit in a box to be shared, where stories, perspectives, and ways of seeing the world can exist without needing to be explained or defended. Just heard, just offered. If something in this conversation resonated with you, take what feels true to you and let the rest simply be part of the conversation. I'm Hilary Sloan. Thank you for listening to Driftwood Conversations.